So I'm very delighted to welcome my colleague, Theresa Nicholson, who's from Manchester Metropolitan University. And Theresa is a reader in higher education and pedagogy, and she is going to talk to us about curriculum design and education for sustainable development in practice. So thank you, Theresa, and over to you.
Oh, well, good. It's just still morning. Yes, so I'm Theresa, and I'm delighted to have been given this opportunity to speak to you and share with some experiences from Manchester Met about using the CoDesignS ESD framework, which I think was mentioned earlier. And I do want to acknowledge that the work that I'm talking about here is work undertaken with a team led by Liz, and also with one of my colleagues, Valeria from Manchester Met, and Maria Torre-Troconis, who is the director of the Association of Learning Design and ESD. Whoops, I've jumped forward too many. Here we go. So I'd like to introduce, first of all, the CoDesignS framework for those that are not familiar with it. This is built on work that's been done by the Association for Learning Design and ESD over a number of years, with significant contributions from others that you see on the slide there. This includes UNESCO, ESALC, who, with the association, supports the delivery of a number of boot camps, international online boot camps, that are designed to provide training in the use of the framework. And a staff student team from Manchester Met went and took part in one of these boot camps in a couple of years ago. And as a result of that, we've now decided to adopt this framework to help us to realise our strategic goal, which is to embed education for sustainable development in all of our programmes by 2026. There's lots of detail about the boot camps from the link, and there's also an app where you can access lots and lots of examples of how the framework has been applied in different disciplines and courses. So to introduce the framework itself, it has three key ingredients. So the first of I'm going to go through these in a little bit more detail as we go through, but just to give you the bigger picture, they are the key competencies for sustainability, which we've also already heard about from Gary, the specific learning objectives for the SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals, and transformative pedagogies and teaching methods. So first of all, key competencies. You've already seen a version of this diagram. These are the knowledge and behaviours that people need to act for sustainability. And what the framework asks us to do is to be explicit about looking for, designing in, mapping the distribution of these key competencies throughout our curricula, and asking, is there balance? Should there be balance? And that might vary in different modules and different disciplines. Is there scope for integrating competencies that are currently not very well represented? And it's also really important to make the link to students between, well, first of all, to highlight what key competencies they are actually developing, but also to make the link back to the graduate attributes. And most universities will have their own set of graduate attributes. These are ours. We have these 6 overarching themes, digital, connected, etc. And within them, there are elements that align very well with sustainability. So, for example, the connected theme talks about collaboration, which is in itself one of the key competencies. It also talks about recognising and respecting diversity, which aligns with normative competency. And if we can't fail to notice that one of the competencies is, sorry, one of the graduate attributes is sustainable attributes. And if we look at the breakdown of the elements within that particular graduate attribute, we've been able to align those with the key competencies. That's from a publication that's in press at the moment. So it's really important, I think, that students are made aware and that they really can see how they are developing these competencies and how they tap into the attributes that they will develop as graduates. So the second ingredient of the framework is the specific learning objectives for the SDGs. And there's kind of two aspects to this. The first is more about, I suppose, the concepts, the knowledge, the understanding around the Sustainable Development Goals and Sustainable Development issues generally, the complexity of the systems and the interconnectedness. And I think that's partly where some aspects of interdisciplinarity fit in there. But the other aspect, which is something that I think that we perhaps overlook a little bit when we're doing our curriculum design and development, and that's building in the so-called heart, head, hands approach. This is this idea that really, we know that teaching students about sustainable development, it taps into our heads, our cognitive selves. If we learn about it in a way that is more transformational, then that can lead to change in our motivations, our values, and hopefully that will then lead on to action being taken. So this is kind of a combination of the knowledge and the behaviours that Gary spoke about. And then the third ingredient is about transformative active learning. So this is very much, about how we do things in the curriculum. There are two elements to this. And one of these is based on some work by OU, which suggests that there is a sort of an idealized breakdown of different types of learning, with 70% of effective learning happening through experiential activities, learning by doing, producing things, creating, practicing, and reflecting, which we spoke about quite a lot in our breakout room. And that actually the things that we're perhaps a little bit more familiar with, that we perhaps do a little bit too much of, the assimilative, the didactic, and the purely communicative teaching and learning really should be a much smaller proportion. But the other aspect to this is the pedagogies that we use. And we heard a little bit about this at the end of the feedback that we had there, when we were talking about problem-based learning and problem solving. The idea that we use methods, and you won't have time to take all of these in. This is just a selection of different types of learning that really kind of fit into that whole cold experiential learning style of learning by doing and reflecting, and gaining experience in things that are connected to the real world, which is another thing that we talked about. We've talked about quite a lot in our breakout room, actually. But we also talked about work-based learning and the importance of that. And I think the importance of one of the things that you might notice about a lot of these is that a lot of these different approaches are highly collaborative. And I think that's really important when it comes to thinking about the whole EDI thing that Ethne talked about. The more we work together and we learn about different perspectives from each other, not so much, as Gary said just now, it's not so much, trying to become, a whatever that we're not. We have our own discipline, but just learning about how other people work, about other people's values, other people's approaches, and how all of these things connect together. So the CoDesignS framework, that there is a planner that comes with it. This is just an extract from it, and it enables you to map your curriculum and all of the different aspects of your curriculum, the SDGs, the key competencies, so that you can be really explicit about them. And it then gives you an analysis on a dashboard, and it's just a selection of some of the visual outputs that you get from the dashboard that really help you to analyze the curriculum that you've designed, and you can then identify, gaps or problem areas to target and to do some redesign. And in fact, we did this as part of the bootcamp that I mentioned, and we applied this to a module called Professional Geographer. And just as one example, before the design, we put in all the data for this particular module, and it showed us that there was a bit of an imbalance in the way that the key competencies were present in that particular module, with very little ways of practicing. And so we did some redesign, particularly around the assessment, and achieved a much better balance. So in that particular case, we changed the style of the assessment so that it was much more hands-on. They produced, instead of a traditional printed portfolio, a professional development portfolio, they did something that was a digital portfolio. So they had to learn new digital skills, use new digital tools. They had to design and create an infographic, and they did all of this collaboratively. And the process of doing that bit of redesign also got us to think about how this particular set of activities tapped into our graduate attributes, so that we now, really make quite a big thing of highlighting that to our students during those particular exercises. So I mentioned at the start that we do have this strategic commitment at Manchester Met to embed ESD in all our programmes by 2026. This is embedded in our sustainability and education strategies. And having adopted the CoDesignS framework, we decided that we wanted to go ahead and produce a whole series of online modules to support our staff to then implement the framework themselves. So we now have this suite of online modules that we're in the process of rolling out. What we hope to achieve by this, we've tried to set like a sort of an engagement hierarchy, where engagement at the basic level is, people have got a basic understanding of ESD, going right forward to level 4, which is ESD is embedded in the majority of modules in a programme, and the framework is used as standard. And we have a variety of mechanisms in place for evaluating the success of the integration. So to try and sort of just summarize, really, or bring this all together, at its most basic, what we're really trying to achieve here is to equip our students, not just with the knowledge or the skills, but to actually take action and be those change agents, the decision makers of the future. And that really, in order to do this, we need to have a strategic approach. The CoDesignS principles really align well with our aspirations for our learners and our graduate attributes. And they align well with what we're trying to do anyway, in terms of developing our learners' conceptual knowledge and understanding. But that alone won't cut it. We need to do the transformative pedagogies. We need to do this learning by doing, transforming students by the way that we do our learning and assessment activities. And all of that together also needs that sort of heart, head, hands approach as well, to tap into values and motivations to make change happen. There is a slide after this, which I think Sally will share with you later, that has some resources and references and things like that you might find useful. But that's it from me. Thank you very much.
So we've got lots of rounds of applause. Any questions for Theresa?
Can I ask one, please?
Yeah, please do, Pete. You speak up a bit, sorry.
Yeah, certainly. I get all of this, and the approach you've got is really interesting and very, very purposeful. There's an underlying assumption here that the sustainable development goals are an exhaustive list of the things that we should be concerned about. I'm slightly concerned that we get kind of overly preoccupied by the SDGs and sometimes miss out on something. So if you look at, say, ED&I, for example, we've already recognised the importance of ED&I for sustainability, but the one aspect that explicitly relates to ED&I and the SDGs, sorry, too many acronyms, is gender equality. So we're actually missing out on quite a lot of other facets of ED&I. So I think there's a little bit of a risk that we kind of overemphasize the value and meaning of the SDGs when we're looking at sustainability.
Yeah, I think I would say, well, first of all, the SDGs, we need to look at them individually, but we also need to consider them very much collectively. And we can think about inequality in relation to all of the other 16, like inequality in education and so on and so forth, and health and well-being and what have you. But that's why I think the framework works really well, because it's not just about the knowledge, it's the heart, head, hands bit I think is really important here, because just kind of thinking about, why we do things, thinking about tapping into people's behaviours, their motivations, their values, and then the transformative learning as well, particularly the collaborative side of it, giving us different perspectives and opening up our awareness, our diversity awareness. So I think I totally understand what you're saying, that that there are some issues with the SDGs, but it's a starting point. But I think all of the other bits of the framework really help with that as well.
I'm just looking at the chat. We've got a few questions in the chat, but we're due for our break now. So very briefly, examples are available through the CoDesignS website. There are lots of examples. And in terms of professional development, I don't know what you want to say a bit more about the professional development we've developed, Theresa?
If we're talking about professional development that's ongoing, so we've got a series of we've translated what we learned about the framework to a series of online modules that are there to support staff. We've also got some workshops, lots of examples, and support and mentoring available for people. I'm not sure if I've understood the question right, but if that was it.
Yes, you have. Thank you very much.
Yes, okay.
Thank you.
If I could just make a very brief point, I will put something in the chat, but the question before about examples of learning sustainability by doing, I would phrase that slightly differently and saying that learning by doing is tapping into the kind of knowledge, behaviours, capabilities, etc., that students need to address sustainability. It's not necessarily, I'm going to do a project about sustainability. It's learning for sustainability rather than about. But I'll put something else in the chat for that one.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Theresa, and thanks everybody for your
Pleasure.
questions. Some examples